Welcome back, everyone, to Cyber Voices, the official podcast of AISA. I'm your host, as always, David Savva-Willett, and it is my pleasure to bring the diverse voices of the Australian cyber community to you. Over the next couple of weeks, I am going to be bringing you a series of interviews that I've performed here in beautiful Queensland, where I'm recording live right now at the Star in Brisbane for AISA's annual BrisSEC conference. And my first guest for today is one of our speakers, and that is Professor Craig Costello, who is a cryptographer in the School of Computer Science at the Queensland University of Technology, specialising in quantum-resistant encryption. For over a decade, his research has helped shape the global development of post-quantum cryptographic standards, the tools needed to secure systems against the coming wave of quantum-enabled threats. Craig, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me, David.
No, it's a pleasure to have you. My first interview for the day, because we are early in the day here, the coffee is still warm. But you're doing a talk at BrisSEC today, and I love the title of this because you rarely hear such pragmatic and, I guess, more positive language around this topic, and that is Quantum Safe Queensland, a practical post-quantum cryptography roadmap to 2030 and beyond. The reason why I say there's such a nice positive tone to that is I mark a lot of papers and talks for submissions around AISA events, and have interviewed a few people around this topic in the past, and it's usually a little bit more panic in the topic titles. Before we dive into what your talk's actually about, we all hear the term quantum computing and post-quantum cryptography a lot. But, there's probably a lot of people out there who've probably been a little bit too scared to ask, what actually is this? For our listeners, what's the layman's explanation of what we mean when we talk about post-quantum cryptography?
The talk this afternoon is definitely going to be, I hope, if there is panic, if there is anyone feeling panic, to kind of put that at ease a little bit. But in recent weeks and months, there's actually been a few developments that have been really exciting in the kind of academic circles that have probably increased panic, at least online, for a few key players. So it's not time to panic, but it's definitely time to take action. But yeah, to talk about what post-quantum cryptography is, basically for 50 years, we've been using certain algorithms for public key cryptography. And those algorithms are based on some very well-studied problems, mathematical problems that we believe are very, very hard. At least classically. So using the sorts of classical machines that we all have in our pockets and on our desktops, solving these problems, we believe is with all of the computers in the world working together in parallel, take, as long as the life age of the universe or something like that. So we believe these problems are very classically hard to solve. About 30 odd years ago, there was a paper by Peter Shaw in the 1990s that showed that if we had access to what's called a quantum computer, so if we had a large-scale quantum computer, then the two problems that we've been using to do public key cryptography since the 70s, they become very, very easy on a large-scale quantum computer. And so at the time in the 90s, this was very much a theoretical thing. There wasn't any panic really. We just carried on about things with not paying too much attention to this, because even a tiny toy scale quantum computer didn't exist. It was just a theoretical concept. But as tiny versions of quantum computers were built in the late 90s, early 2000s, and now in the last 25 years, we've seen steady progress in people building larger and larger quantum hardware. The problem has become one that's become more interesting to practitioners. And now that quantum computing is becoming kind of ubiquitous and everybody's talking about it, and there's a lot of investment from government and industry all around the world, cryptographers have started to take action, because those two problems that we've been using to found our public key cryptography on since the 70s are under threat. And so what post-quantum cryptography is, it's basically cryptography that is resistant to a quantum attacker. So we're assuming that an attacker has a large-scale quantum computer, and we're trying to do cryptography that will withstand any attack that enables, an adversary to carry out, whether they've got all of the classical compute that we've already got in the world, or whether they've got this futuristic large-scale quantum computer that we're anticipating is going to be built in the next few years or the next couple of decades. And so post-quantum cryptography is replacing the algorithms that we know will be broken with a large-scale quantum computer with algorithms that we hope will resist attacks with a quantum computer. Sometimes it helps to smooth out a misconception that people have that you need a quantum computer to implement post-quantum cryptography. That's false. Post-quantum cryptography is cryptography that you can implement on classical hardware, and it behaves very similar to the stuff we've been using for a long time. The only difference is that, or the key difference is that we don't know of a quantum attack against these hard problems, whereas we do know of a quantum attack against the problems we've been using. So it's kind of, from a functionality standpoint, post-quantum cryptography doesn't necessarily do anything new. It still just allows us to exchange secret keys and to authenticate to one another. But otherwise, it's kind of the same functionality as always, but just with new hard mathematical problems sitting underneath that we hope are resistant to quantum attackers.
Are we racing to try and get ourselves ready before someone who would do something bad with this technology gains this ability? And I guess how far away are we talking about this being available at scale? Because I know, in 2019, Google kind of touted that they had their first, quantum computer solving some pretty innocuous problems. But where is this still sitting in existential threat kind of land, or is it really on our doorstep like everyone says?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. So the first thing is, and I've been kind of working in this field for about 15 years, and the most common question that we're asked whenever we give talks or speak in public about these things is, when is a large scale quantum computer going to be built? Because there's a lot of diverse opinion about how imminent the threat is and how far off it is. There's a lot of diverse views in terms of when that day will come. But part of the problem is the uncertainty that we don't know when it's gonna arrive. Now, one thing that makes that question, I guess, that makes it hard to deal with is we need to have post-quantum cryptography in place well in advance of large-scale quantum computers being built. And the reason is, well, one very good reason for this is what we call harvest now, decrypt later attacks. And so harvest now, decrypt later attacks are based on the assumption that a powerful adversary, so maybe like a nation-state adversary, might be anticipating a quantum computer coming to fruition in the next 5 to 10 years. And therefore they might be storing all of the traffic or all of the data that's currently encrypted and just waiting for that quantum computer to become available sometime in the future so that they can retroactively decrypt the data that they're storing today. Now, I guess the assumption there is that it will be a very well-funded, large-scale adversary that will be the first one to build one of these things, because as we know that, or as you may have seen in the news, there's a lot of money. It's going to take a lot of money to build one, as far as we know. And so the idea is that there could be an attacker out there that's just storing a bunch of encrypted data, waiting to have this, master key, that this quantum computer that they can retroactively decrypt our data and go back and look at secrets from the past that might still need to be secret now. So those harvest now, decrypt later attacks are very relevant. It kind of means that if let's say that a quantum computer is going to be around in 5 years, and we're encrypting data now with the traditional methods that aren't quantum safe, then any data that we're encrypting now that we want to be safe 5 years down the track, the other big part is that it takes so long to upgrade our encryption. So it takes a long time to roll out the new standards, to get them implemented properly. There's a lot of teething that happens when new cryptographic algorithms are implemented. There's a lot of things that you can't anticipate until you see these things deployed in practice. There's a lot of physical, non-mathematical attacks that can be mounted on different embedded implementations or different types of implementations. So it takes a long time to get cryptography upgraded, implemented properly, and we want that to happen before a quantum computer comes. So it's unknown when the day will be, but it's kind of, I think the point is now that the day is close enough that it's time to take action. Now, in recent weeks and months, there's been a lot of exciting work in this field. For the last couple of decades, the yardstick for how long we've got left before quantum computers break our encryption, the yardstick has always been this kind of steady graph of progress in building quantum hardware. So you see announcements like the Google announcement you mentioned in 2019 about, we've got a quantum, I can't remember how many qubits it was, let's say it was 80 qubits. We've got an 80 qubit quantum chip that anybody can buy and use. And then over time, these hardware announcements have slowly but surely got bigger and better. So quantum computers been steadily growing over the years. In recent weeks and months, very recently, in the last month, in fact, there was two big announcements one of them was Google AI, and the other one was UC Berkeley and Caltech, and I think Atomic. These two papers that landed both on the archives within a week of each other that were coming at the problem from the other direction. So typically us as cryptographers, we say, okay, we need 1 million qubits to solve the factorization or the discrete log problem. That's a bit of jargon for those mathematical problems I was talking about earlier. We need this size of quantum computer to break these problems. And because that's kind of been out of reach for a long time, it's been, a few orders of magnitude beyond the quantum hardware capabilities. It's felt like, okay, we've still got enough time. It's still going to be, not in the very near future. Those couple of papers, what they're doing is coming at it from the other direction. So they're not improving quantum hardware, but they're lowering the requirements of the quantum hardware that's needed by showing that there's a lot smarter versions of quantum algorithms. There's some clever optimizations that they've done to basically lower the quantum resources that you need to mount these attacks. So on the one hand, you've got quantum hardware steadily growing, and on the other hand, you've got announcements and academic kind of theoretical quantum algorithms work that's saying, actually, you don't need 1 million qubits. You only need 100,000 qubits. And then, a week later, it was actually, you only need 10,000 physical qubits, which is there's a lot of jargon there, but basically they're bringing down the number of the size of a quantum computer that would be needed to break encryption by doing some clever optimization on I guess you would think of it as like the quantum software side or the algorithmic side. So these announcements have certainly kind of, I guess, have led to some more panic among the community. Google was one of the two parties that gave these announcements, and they said, look, we're going to announce that in 2029 we think Q-Day will have arrived by then. Q-Day is kind of the word that gets thrown around for when a quantum computer will break.
Very sci-fi, I love it.
Yeah, very sci-fi. Y2Q is another term that you hear about. And so Google have said, they've put a stake in the ground and said, 2029, we think Q-Day will have arrived. We're going to mandate that our encryption is rolled over by then, which is, that's, I guess, somewhat of a more aggressive timeline than we've seen in recent years, but it makes sense given these really kind of significant jumps in terms of the algorithmic side coming, like lowering the expected resources.
We always talk about so much in terms of the fear side around quantum computing, like and what it'll mean to break traditional cryptography that we've had around since the 70s. Do we ever hear any conversations around, well, what's actually going to be the benefits to society when quantum computing comes in?
We believe that there is a quantum safe alternative that we can implement on our classical devices now, which is great. So the solution already exists to totally thwart the problem, at least in theory. The real problem that we have now is getting it deployed.
It's upgrading the whole world.
Upgrading the whole world, which which is certainly a big non-trivial task. But
anyone who's ever tried to perform any kind of upgrade within one organization.
Yes, exactly. In terms of the positive aspect, quantum computers are being built for these purposes. We hope, we believe. I think there could be some nefarious actors out there that are only trying to build one to try to break whatever encryption is still not post-quantum when they do manage to build one. But we can only assume that these big government and industry investments to build quantum computers for the positive side now. Initially, when the notion of quantum computing was conceived, I guess in the last 50 years, it was kind of based on these physicists that were unable to kind of perform simulations of chemical interactions and certain subatomic interactions that are very, very, when we're talking about trying to simulate a complex molecule, roughly speaking, every time you add an electron, you're kind of doubling the number of possible configurations or combinations that these simulations can do. So as soon as you have enough, I guess, subatomic particles interacting with each other, then it becomes very hard to simulate on a classical computer. Every time we add one variable to the mix, you're doubling the complexity of these things. So very quickly it becomes kind of out of range for our classical computers to be able to simulate these chemical equations or chemical reactions or these kind of molecular, what's happening at the molecular level. I guess the genius of quantum computing is that these physicists that were thinking, how are we going to simulate this? How can we possibly capture this complexity on a classical computer? And then the genius of quantum computing was they came along and said, well, if classical computers suck at doing this, if they're not good at simulating whatever this complexity is, then surely we could, or possibly we could build computers that are harnessing that complexity at that low level. And that was kind of the incredible genius of David Deutsch and a few other physicists that were coming at the problem from the other way and thinking, okay, if we can't simulate these things classically, then maybe we can use them to use this complexity to our advantage. So that kind of gave birth to this field of quantum computing. And so the idea is that really at the lowest level, our universe is quantum mechanical. So at a level that we've only just become to understand in the last century or thereabouts, at the very finest level, our subatomic particles behave in a quantum mechanical way. And so if we want to be able to simulate and to perform computations that respect the laws of our universe, then we need quantum computers to do that. And the idea is that if we can do things like simulate complex molecules and things like that, then the sorts of applications will be things like discovering drugs to maybe cure cancer or fix a given disease, really, really important and fundamental problems that are facing humanity like that. Another one is climate change, which is there's a lot of things that we're doing that are suboptimal in terms of, the yield that we might get out of fertilizers and things like that where if we had unbounded computational resources, we could perform these simulations and get new insights that allow us to solve these really pressing problems. And the idea is that quantum computers are going to take us there in certain applications a lot faster than our classical hardware can progress. We're just getting started in terms of what the applications of a quantum computer could be. And I think right now we might be just scratching the surface in terms of the long game in terms, of what quantum computers can achieve. So I think there is really exciting applications that we know of, but I think that there'll be a lot more as the decades roll on, a lot more applications that come to light that quantum computers can solve that classical computers can't.
Of course, and you smash that together with the other big thing happening right now, which is AI. The sky's the limit, really. And anyone who listens to this show knows I mentioned frequently when these topics come up what a massive consumer of science fiction I am. And I love that we're on the cusp of pretty much everything I've been reading about since I was a child. And we could probably do a whole 2-hour podcast on what quantum computing actually is and the applications of it. So I appreciate you taking the time to set that scene a little bit. But I want to move on now to what you're going to be talking about at BrisSEC today, which is your practical post-quantum cryptography roadmap to 2030 and beyond. Given that the mandated national policy will come into force by 2030 and, Google says Q-Day's coming in 2029.
For a lot of the talk, I'll be trying to be very precise about what the problem is, because I think, again, there's a lot of the community of non-specialists across the very broad and diverse cybersecurity landscape that just think, oh, quantum computers are scary. They're going to come and break everything. And, they're actually, as far as we know, quite useless in a lot of ways. It's just that they're very, very good at solving specific problems. And it just so happens that the problems that we chose to build public key cryptography are an instance of those problems that quantum computers are very good at. So they're not like a silver bullet that can just solve all computational problems. They're, as far as we know and as far as we know to date, the sorts of things where you get a really big exponential advantage on a quantum computer are niche and are very specific to the way that quantum computers work. So it's not something that's going to come and destroy the whole field. The subfield of cybersecurity that I work in, which is cryptography, and the very specific subfield that I work on, it just so happens that quantum computers are good at solving a couple of those problems. So the ASD, Australian Signals Directorate, have kind of given a very rough guide as to how companies should react. They've given, often their advice, and it is very good, the steps that they've pointed out, but often it's, I guess, the wording when you read the advice and things on the ASD website tends to be a bit high level and abstract, probably for good reason. Oftentimes it's not very concrete of like, this is what you should do and when you should do it. They've given a high level version of that, but I'm going to kind of break it down and just I guess, finish the talk with a bit of some general pointers that companies can take on board for the next week, for the next 90 days, and then for the next few months in terms of starting their post-quantum transition plan.
I'd love for our audience as well, who our listeners of the podcast who maybe are grappling with what that plan is, and maybe a particular CISO who's sitting across the table from you who's also grappling with what that plan might be. What are some of these pointers?
Well, so the first one I would say is you need to put someone in charge of the transition. So you need to nominate someone to be the figurehead and say, look, you're going to be the person in charge of the post-quantum transition. So you and, a team of, we might form a team that we're going to resource for the next few years, where maybe you start out, one day a fortnight, one day a month working on this, because of course everyone has a lot of other priorities. And then over the next 90 days, there'll be, a fair few steps. So we want to have a look at our inventory. We want to basically look at our whole inventory and try to spot all of the places where post-quantum cryptography will be needed. And then we need to consider what's the more pressing concern, whether it's our key exchange. The key exchange stuff is the stuff that you'd want to migrate first, and the digital signatures and the kind of certificate, the PKI, the certificate infrastructure will come later. For a technical reason, it's less of a pressing concern to worry about authentication, but the places where you're using public key encryption to derive a shared secret, that's the place that's the highest priority because of those harvest now, decrypt later attacks. And so they're the kind of points you want to address first. So the first, I guess, practical step is to do an inventory scan in the next few months, and that will allow you to then plan and plan the first stages of migration.
I like the advice there as well around, this needs to be someone's day job, maybe part-time, part of their role to start with, the same way that pretty much every organization these days has got someone who's been put in charge of AI.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Are you seeing a lot of organizations starting to pick up some of this advice? Where is this being done well, I guess? What areas, like what organizations, industries are doing it well?
It's a great question. So the area where I feel like it's going to be, or it's already been done, is so you're talking like OpenSSL, you're talking, TLS as well, that, TLS 1.3 has already got the post-quantum hybrid as one of its cipher suites, and Google, Cloudflare, all of these kind of big software companies, I think there's that kind of, our browsers and stuff are going to find it the easiest, because there'll be one company, that we don't have to worry about, that have just done it for us as part of their TLS. As part of their TLS upgrade, they'll do it for us, and all of a sudden one day we'll be like, oh, my Firefox or my Chrome or my Safari, whatever it is post quantum. So like those big companies will be first. It's kind of the SMEs and the niche areas where there's a lot of legacy code that's around, where they might even be using stuff that they shouldn't have been using 20 years ago. There's a lot of different corner cases in terms of, IoT scenarios, things like that, where you've got a whole different network infrastructure, and where these upgrades are going to require a bit more kind of tailored attention. That's where things are probably going to be the hardest. It's not going to be, so if I talk about our university at QUT, for example, if we were to say, okay, I want QUT to be quantum safe, I want the whole QUT network and infrastructure to be upgraded to be quantum secure. Well, QUT's got a heap of vendors, so there's like so many vendors that it's hard to kind of enumerate them all. But at some point, a lot of that work will be, whether QUT's reaching out or a group of universities reaching out and saying, we want you to upgrade now because we're doing that work in other places. So a lot of it will be vendor interactions and things like that. And then anything that's in-house that's kind of home-baked, I guess, is the stuff where the migration needs to be done within. And so, a lot of the big companies, big software companies have already started rolling over. But it's really, if you've got a company that's doing their own encryption for whatever reason, then I guess those scenarios are the ones that would require maybe the most tailored attention.
And maybe the ones who should listen to this podcast and start to get their plan together from the sounds of it. Before I let you go as well, what is the most common misconception around post-quantum cryptography or quantum computing that you come across that you would maybe like to squash?
I think for post-quantum cryptography, it would be the fear of it, in that, yeah, as you said, that because it's got the word quantum in it and it's based on kind of this gnarly physics that I nor most of the world understand, that none of us really understand, it seems really scary. So I think the way to quash that is to kind of abstract. Yes, we do have to transition to post-quantum algorithms, but the way to abstract away from it is to kind of remove the quantum out of it at all. It's actually just replacing an old algorithm, whether it's RSA signatures or elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman, these very specific cryptographic algorithms. You're just replacing that with a different algorithm that does the same thing. And so you can kind of remove the quantum threat out of it, or the word quantum out of it if you want, and just think, I'm just going to replace, this bit of code. Well, this is a very dumbed down version, but I'm just going to take this bit of code and replace it with this bit of code. That's at a high level is kind of what's going on. So from one thing I would say is it's kind of a really good lesson in crypto agility. We call crypto agility the ability to be able to swap out stuff, because historically we've seen that all cryptography becomes not redundant, but threats evolve over time, and at some point we've seen all of the cryptography that we've been implementing, as long as the internet's been alive at least, has become deprecated and needs an upgrade. And someone finds a new attack and we find something better, and it's time to evolve. And this is just another one of those. It sounds more scary because it's got the word quantum in it, but really nothing we're doing on our classical devices involves quantum in any way. We're just changing out an algorithm for a different algorithm that does the same thing, and doing that, it's basically just kind of good security practice to implement something that we think guards us against a future attack, and that's it. So I would say that the best way to quash if there is any panic or hysteria or fear of quantum or post-quantum cryptography, then just to think of it like any other upgrade is a really, I guess, a pragmatic way to go.
Yep.
In terms of the question about quantum computing, what if there's any misconceptions about it? I don't really know. It's something that I'm basically a novice in the quantum algorithm side. I've kind of gone back to a very student mindset about it, and I'm trying to learn more and more about it. But it is deeply interesting, and it is really, really fascinating. I'm super excited by it, but it isn't scary at the lowest level, at the kind of, when you're talking the physics or the quantum mechanics, at that level, it's just a different set of rules that you have to play by. There's different rules in quantum computing that, like anything we learn, if you learn a card game and then someone switches the rules up, you have to learn how to play that. And it's the same thing with learning quantum computing. It's just you're given a different set of laws that you have to abide by, and then logic and things that follow is all very much what we're used to working with.
Yeah, and as you say, it's just the next iteration, right?
Right. Yeah,
the way we interact with technology and computers and the internet has been evolving, like in our lifetimes, right, for decades.
Yep.
And each new revolution takes things to the next step.
Exactly.
And you can be afraid of it if you want, but you can also embrace the change, which I think people who listen to this podcast will definitely do that. Are there any resources or anything you would recommend in terms of if people want to do any further investigation or education in this space? Where would you direct them?
Yeah, so if you're an Australian company, then the ASD have got in the ASD's ISM, the Information Security Manual, they've got a description of what they're which algorithms that they're advocating for, or which algorithms they're kind of supporting, and what the timeframes are. On the ASD's website, there's a page called Planning for Post-Quantum Cryptography. I might have stuffed up the title, but it's something like that, where the ASD give some practical steps and a framework for dealing with this that's very similar to what I was talking about before with scanning your inventory and all those sorts of things. But basically, it's kind of the next 4 years is when Australia's kind of urging their companies and businesses to take action. Another thing I would say is if you're someone that's in charge of this and you're confused and you want to talk more, then myself or anyone on our team at QUT is always happy to talk with. From my perspective, I would love to be engaged with any kind of industry partners that are worried about the problem or finding teething issues with upgrading or just don't know where to start, because oftentimes that throws up interesting research and, deployment engineering, and then oftentimes theoretical questions that come for us. So I like to be engaged as much as possible with industry partners that might want to work with us. We can help each other out, and so please feel free to reach out.
Great.
Other resources, I think there's standards being produced all over the world, but it's always best to look at the Australian standards and what the Australian government is saying.
Excellent. Well, we will definitely collate and grab some of those resources off you and pop them into the show notes. There you have it, everyone. So that was Professor Craig Costello, cryptographer in the School of Computer Science at the Queensland University of Technology. And, if you want to get along to one of the SEC days happening in your capital city, you will be able to hear some amazing thought leadership from people who are just as smart and amazing as Craig. Craig, thank you so much for bringing this topic to BrisSEC, and thank you for sharing your voice with us today.
Thanks a lot for having me, David.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Cyber Voices. Our music is by Sanar Garut, our show artwork is by Studio Quarantine, and we record our show at This Is a Studio in Pran, Melbourne, part of Popplant Productions. Please make sure you follow the show on your podcast platform of choice and leave us a 5-star review. This will help others find the show. Also, please follow the association on LinkedIn and Instagram. If you want to add your voice to our ever-growing chorus of diverse cyber voices, have questions, feedback, or would like to be a sponsor, you can do so by emailing us at cybervoices@aisa.org.au. That's cybervoices@aisa.org.au. Are you an AISA member? If not, you should consider joining our network of over 12,000 members across Australia. An AISA membership can open doors, build professional networks, create lifetime friendships, and offer exclusive training, events, and other perks. Become a member today by heading to our website at aisa.org.au. That is all for today. I hope you will join us again next time on Cyber Voices.